So today we're looking at installment loans, monthly payments, and finance charge. Today is Tuesday, February 16th. Hopefully everybody had a nice 3-day weekend. My printer started to lose just a tiny bit of ink as I was printing this out today. So I'm just going to read this. So our lesson objective is to calculate the monthly payment, the total amount repaid, and finance charge on an installment loan. And so the vocab that we're looking today is called an annual percentage rate, which is called APR. On commercials, you might have seen this a few times. Like they'll tell you the interest rate and they'll talk about APR as well. All right, so let's see. This first question here says, why is it important to have a good credit score? That's what it said before it started being weird with my printing. The rest of the papers should be just fine. Yeah, the rest of them are good. So this says that Jenny Foster is a science major in college, and she knows she wants to open her own biotechnology company someday, and that she may have to take out a loan. So she is working hard to make sure she has a good credit score. And I think we've seen a video already about credit scores. It says that Jenny keeps a low balance on her credit card, which is important for maintaining a good credit score. So she keeps a low balance on her credit card and pays her student loans and credit card bills on time. So on-time payments, keeping low balances, all of that is really important to maintaining a good credit score. So installment loans. And by the way, we're not really going to be dealing with credit scores here. This is just sort of an introduction to the idea of if you take out a loan, make sure that you're paying things back on time. I know that we've already talked about that, so I'm not going to harp on it too much today. So installment loans, it says when you obtain an installment loan, and if that's too small, I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit. When you obtain an installment loan, you must pay finance charges for the use of the money. You're basically, if you're borrowing money from somebody, you have to pay them back plus interest because you're paying for the amount of time that you've borrowed the money for. You repay the loan with equal monthly payments over a specified period of time. Part of each payment pays the interest on the loan's unpaid balance. The remaining part of the payment is used to reduce the balance to the balance of the loan principal. That's the amount of money that you borrowed. The amount of each monthly payment depends on the amount financed, the number of payments, and the annual percentage rate. The annual percentage rate is an index showing the cost of borrowing money on a yearly basis expressed as a percent. You will need to refer to the monthly payment on an installment loan of $100 table on page A13, which I've already posted. Like I said, that one's posted in the notes section and in the assignment section online. The table of value to calculate related amounts. So the following formulas are used with the table method. To calculate the monthly payment, you're going to take the amount of the loan and then divide it by 100. You're then going to multiply that by the monthly payment for a $100 loan amount that is on that table A13. So I've got A13 in my book here as well. I'll go ahead and I'll be showing this occasionally. So that's this table here. It's the same one that's in the notes section and the assignment, but we'll be referring to this as well. Okay, so your monthly payment, calculating your monthly payment using the table. We'll get to that in a few minutes. And then the total amount repaid is equal to the number of payments multiplied by the monthly payment. Now, the total amount repaid means the amount of money that you borrowed plus the amount of interest that you paid. And if you want to know how much interest you paid over the total amount of the loan, that's this last one, the finance charge, that is equal to the total amount repaid, the previous number here, minus the amount financed, the amount that you borrowed initially. So we're going to be using those three formulas for the first example or two, and then we're going to move on to a different formula, a formula that's actually quite a large formula, but like I said, if you can type it in correctly into that online calculator, it's not too bad. All right, so those are the three that we're going to be using today to get things started. So first example says that Blake and Jacqueline Topfer? Yeah, let's go with that. Blake and Jacqueline Topfer are purchasing a $1,399.99 side-by-side refrigerator with an installment loan that has an APR of 12%. So that means over the course of the year, you're paying 12% interest. The store financing requires a 10% down payment and 12 monthly payments. What is the amount? So what is the finance charge? So we need to know how much money are they spending in fees, basically, to borrow the money to buy the refrigerator. That's the whole part of this problem, is to figure that out. Now, in order to figure out the finance charge, we first have to figure out the total amount repaid, which means we first have to figure out the monthly payment. So we have to do all three of these in order to figure out the finance charge. So step one, we actually have to figure out the amount financed first, because the amount financed would be the amount that they actually borrowed to pay for this $1,399.99. Now, they didn't borrow this much money because it says that they were required to make a 10% down payment. So that's what we have to do first. We have to figure out how much money they put down and how much money they borrowed. So the down payment amount is, so let's see, the down payment is going to equal, and this is what we dealt with in section 8.2. This is the cash selling price, $1,399.99, multiplied by the percent of the down payment, so 0.10. So that's our first calculation. So this is what we did for section 8.2. So we have to figure out how much money was put down, and that's going to be, looks like an even 140, because it's 139.999. This third nine rounds everything up by one to an even $140 for the down payment. So the amount financed is equal to the selling price, which is that $1,399.99, minus the down payment, which we found out was $140. Okay, so $1,399.99 minus 140 is $1,259.99. So that is where we're beginning. So the amount of the loan, what we just figured out, that's this here, $1,259.99, which was a separate calculation altogether, because this calculation, the amount of the loan, is what we did from section 8.2. So like I said, it's a pretty calculation heavy day, but if you can follow these steps, then you'll be able to work through every problem in the notes, every problem in the assignment. Just make sure you're referring back to this as you're working through those things. Step two is to actually use our first new formula today. So it says to find the monthly payment, refer to the monthly payment of an installment loan of $100 table on page A13 for a table value. So what we're going to do here, monthly payment, so monthly payment equals, it equals the amount of the loan divided by $100. Well, we have the amount of the loan, that's the $1,259.99. So $1,259.99 over 100. Then we're going to multiply it by the value that matches up with what we're dealing with here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that table. This table that we're told to use to figure out the monthly payment for $100 loan for the amount of 100. Here is our table. So the way you're going to use this is it tells us APRs across the top, and it tells us the number of months that the loan is for across the left-hand side. So we just need those two things to figure out where to look on this table. So on this one here, it tells us that we have an APR of 12%. So we're going to use 12% across the top, 10% down to 12 monthly payments. So across the top, we find 12%. Down the left-hand side, we find 12 payments, and then we figure out where those two things intersect. So 12% across the top, 12 payments. There it is, 8.88. That is the number right there that we're going to put in to the second part of that formula. So 8.88 is the number we need for the monthly payment of a $100 loan. That's the 8.88 that we saw from that table. And then I'm just going to use my calculator for this one here to do this calculation. We'll use the Desmos calculator in a little bit. I'm going to open up a fraction. I'm going to say 1259.99 over 100 times 8.88. So exactly that formula right there. And so our monthly payment is $111.89. 111.89 is what we end up with. So monthly payment, $111.89. So every month for 12 months, it's going to cost $111.89 to buy that refrigerator. So let's go ahead and keep going on this problem. So the next page, we're going to finish this up. It says step 3, find the total amount repaid. So the total amount repaid is equal to the number of payments, which we know is 12, times the monthly payment, which we just calculated is $111.89. So we're going to take our 12 times 111.89. And so that $1,259.99 that were borrowed turns into a total repayment of $1,342.68. So $1,342.68. So basically, we're trying to figure out how much money did that loan actually cost them? Because if you borrow $1,259.99 and you pay back $1,259.99, that loan didn't actually cost you anything because you just paid back what you borrowed. However, they borrowed $1,259.99 and paid back $1,342.68. So we want to know how much interest over the course of that loan, over that 1 year, how much interest did they have to pay? And that's the finance charge. So that's the total amount repaid. So the $1,342.68 minus the amount that was financed, the amount that was borrowed, which was that $1,259.99. And so if we subtract the amount borrowed from the total repaid, we end up with $82.69 paid in interest over that year. So $82.69 was paid back over the course of the year. So just to recap real quick here. In order to figure out the finance charge, it just said on this problem, what is the finance charge? Well, it wasn't as simple as using one formula. We actually had to do 4 different steps to make this happen. Now, each individual step, not particularly complicated, but that's why it's really important to go back as you're working on the assignment to look through this to make sure that you're doing these correctly. Check through the steps, figure out what you have to do first, move on to the next one. And if you follow these steps, then you'll end up being all right. Now, this one here is broken down a little bit more. I think this one is a little bit more understandable because they break it down a little bit more for you, because you eventually have to figure out what the finance charge is. However, it does remind you that you have to first find the down payment amount, and then B, the amount financed, the monthly payment, and the total amount repaid, and the finance charge. So there's a lot of things that are going on here. So This is the exact same thing as what we just did on the first problem, except it specifically tells you what things you have to do to finally find out the finance charge. So it breaks it down quite nicely. So let's read this. It says, Ingrid Nilsson purchased a $4,000 gazebo for her garden. The down payment is 20%, and the installment loan has an APR of 10% for 36 months. So we're basically dealing with 3 years. Find A, the down payment, B, the amount financed, C, the monthly payment, D, the amount repaid, and E, the finance charge. So A, down payment. And the down payment is equal to the purchase price, the cash price of $4,000 multiplied by the percent that was put down, which is 20%. I think that'll end up being $800. So let's see, 4,000 times 0.2 is $800 down payment. All right, so A, down payment amount, 800 bucks. So that's it for that one. B, the amount financed, is equal to the cash price minus the down payment. So the amount that they're borrowing to pay off the rest of it is $3,200. A and B, done. C, the monthly payment. That's equal to the amount borrowed or the amount financed divided by 100 multiplied by, that's this formula right here. We're using the monthly payment formula here. So for the monthly payment, the amount of the loan, 3,200 divided by 100, multiplied by the monthly payment for a $100 loan. So this is the table. So for this one here, use table A13. So we're going to go back to the table. And the two things we needed from the table were the APR across the top. So we're looking at 10%. And the number of payments, the number of months being paid off, 36. So 10% across the top, 36 down the side. So here we go. 10% across the top, right here. And then 36 down the side. So we're looking at 3.23 for the value that we are using to multiply after our amount borrowed over 100. So 3.23 is the number that gets multiplied right here to get our monthly payments, 3.23. All right, so the monthly payment, get a fraction, $3,200 borrowed, divided by 100, multiplied by 3.23, $103.36. So every month is $103.36 paid on that balance of $3,200, $103.36. Okay. See, we've got A, B, and C. D, the total amount repaid. And the total amount repaid, that formula is right here. The number of payments, which we know in this problem is 36, times the monthly payment, which we just figured out, 103.36. So for part D, amount repaid. So this includes the 3,200 plus interest, essentially, is what we're doing here. So 36 payments times the monthly payment, 103.36. $3,720.96. So, last part, E, the finance charge, is equal to the amount repaid, so that's this last formula here, the amount repaid minus the amount financed. So the amount repaid, 3,720.96 minus 3,200. So 3720.96 minus 3,200, $520.96. So that gazebo that sold for $4,000, they ended up spending $4,520.96 for a gazebo that cost $4,000. And that's kind of going back to, this is kind of where it gets a little bit practical. Going back to last week when I was talking about, things that can be financed. Now, $500 of interest over 3 years, it's kind of a lot. So I would recommend, if you want to buy something like this, either put a lot more money down or wait until you have the $4,000 and then just buy it all at once, because otherwise you can end up spending, $500 is, what is that, like 12.5%? Yeah. So basically you're paying 12.5% more for this because you had to borrow money than if you might have saved up to buy it just all at once in the first place. So, be careful when places offer financing on things that maybe you could wait on and just purchase outright a little bit later. All right. So the next thing we're looking at today, and the last thing we're looking at today, is a different formula. Now, this formula looks intimidating. Here it is. This is a monthly payment formula. Now, the nice thing about this, if there is a nice thing, is that this can figure out your monthly payment right away without having to figure out the down payment amount. Well, actually, you do have to figure out the down payment amount and the amount financed. But what you don't have to do is use the table. You don't have to go back and forth with that table. So all the things that you need to figure out your monthly payment are right in this formula, right here. So what this formula shows, and this is where we're going to use the online calculator for this next part, because like I said, if you can type this in correctly, you don't necessarily need to know everything that's going on here. You just need to be able to plug this in correctly. So the monthly payment is equal to P times R times 1 plus R to the n power all over 1 plus R to the n power minus 1. Now, again, knowing exactly what this formula is and exactly how it works isn't necessarily the point here. It's just making sure that you can plug in correctly to figure out what's going on. So P is the principal or the amount borrowed. That's the amount that you have to figure out. So you do have to figure out your down payment to figure out how much was borrowed. R is the rate per payment. The rate per payment is your total APR, like in this case, 9%. Divided by the number of payments per year, which is usually going to be 12, because monthly payments are just kind of the basic standard across whatever it is. So basically it's your percentage divided by 12. That's usually how it ends up working. And then N is the number of payments required to pay off the loan. So the total number of payments to pay off the loan. And it says that solving problems with this formula requires the use of a y to the x key. Now on this type of calculator, it would be the kind of up triangle right here, but we're going to use the Desmos calculator online to work through this. So let's take a look. It says, I'm going to leave that formula there. Harry Mills obtained a $4,500 installment loan at a rate of an APR of 9%. He must repay the loan in 24 months, so 2 years, find A, the monthly payment, using the formula, then the amount repaid. So that's the monthly payment times the number of months, and then the finance charge, which is the total amount repaid minus the amount borrowed. So this one here doesn't tell you anything about a down payment or anything like that. It just says that's how much was borrowed. So let's go ahead and I'm going to write this formula. So we're going to have monthly payment. I'm going to write this on paper first, and then we'll plug it into the Desmos calculator. So the principal amount borrowed is P. That's 4,500. Okay, and then we're going to multiply that by R. R is not just the rate. R is the rate divided by the number of payments per year. Now it's a monthly payment, so it's not divided by 24, it's divided by 12 because there are 12 payments in 1 year. So that's going to be 0.09 over 12 for the value of R. And then that's going to be multiplied by, in parentheses, 1.00 plus the value of R again, which is this 0.09 over 12. And this is going to look really messy and complicated. But like I said, this has more to do with being able to type this in correctly into the calculator than anything else. So all to the n power. The n power is the number of payments required to pay off the entire loan. Well, it says here that he has to pay it off in 24 months. So that's 24 payments. So to the 24th power. That's our numerator. And then the denominator, like I said, is going to look pretty crazy. We don't have to do any of these calculations by hand. The denominator, 1.00 plus value of R again. So it's just this whole parenthesis with the exponent again. So it just is on the denominator as well, plus 0.09 over 12, all to the 24th power, minus 1.00. Okay, now, this looks super messy and complicated, but like I said, as long as you can get this typed into the online calculator correctly, you're good to go. So please go to the online calculator now. Make sure you have that open because knowing how to use that is going to be the key to actually doing these problems. Let's head back to Google Classroom, open up the scientific calculator. And yeah, honestly, they look super, super complicated, but because you're not really having to do any of the calculations like by yourself, it's sort of like, I don't know, it makes it like you can do really, really, really super complicated things, but there's kind of a secret in that as long as you can type it into the calculator, you're going to get the right answer. So what we need to do is we need to create a fraction here. So get your Desmos calculator open. We're going to create a fraction by clicking the AB button. So click that. And so we're going to get all of our numerator in there, and then we'll move on to the denominator. So our principal value was 4,500. And then we're going to multiply. And the next, and what we're multiplying by is a fraction. So what we're going to do is actually hit the AB button again to get a fraction by itself on the numerator. And that was 0.09. And then you can just hit the down arrow over 12 payments per year. So 9% over 12 payments per year. What we need to do is hit the right arrow next to get this off of the denominator. And then that gets multiplied by parentheses 1.00 plus, and then we're going to hit the AB button again because this is R. We're going to have to get R in there again. So plus 0.09. Hit the down arrow again to get to your denominator over 12. So there's R again. And we're going to hit the right arrow one more time. Close the parentheses. And that's going to be all to the 24th power. So we want this A to the B button. Click on the A to the B button. That'll give us an exponent and then 24. So there's our numerator of our giant fraction. And then for the denominator, you can just click on the denominator and then it'll go to the denominator. Now we can start typing in everything on the denominator. So we're going to type in the exact same thing that we had up here in the parentheses with the exponent of 24. So 1.00 plus, and then another fraction on the denominator. So hit AB again, or A over B, and then 0.09, hit the down arrow, 12. And then hit the right arrow, close your parentheses, A over A to the B power again, which opens up the exponent, and then 24. Hit the right arrow one more time to get it off of the exponent, and then minus 1.00, and then hit enter. And there it is. So we end up with a monthly payment of $205.58. So all of that to get a monthly payment of $205.58. We're definitely going to practice this one more time on the next problem as well. But that right there, if you can get that typed in correctly, all of the information was provided. So all we had to do was plug things into the right place, make sure it got typed in correctly, and we ended up with exactly what we needed. All right. So 205.58 is our monthly payment. I'm going to switch back to the document camera. And we've got that answer written in right here. Now, this calculator can do the exact same thing. It would be tough to do on a phone, a phone's calculator, unless you had like a separate app, like a good scientific calculator app, which is why we're using the Desmos calculator, because it does everything that you need it to do. And it actually shows it in this exact form here. So you don't have to get too fancy with typing things in. It's pretty accessible. All right, B. So we got A. A is the tough part. B, what is the amount repaid? So B, amount repaid is equal to the total number of payments, 24 right here. So 24 times the monthly payment of 205.58. So that part's not too hard. So the second part's just straight multiplication, 24 times 205.58. That's 4,933.92. So 4,933.92, which means that the amount financed, so C, last part, is equal to the total amount repaid, 4933.92, minus, so the amount repaid minus the amount borrowed, or the principal value, or the amount financed, whatever you want to call it. And we get total amount financed of $433.92. Okay. So that is how we get that. So let's work on this last one. This is the very last one we're going to do. Looks like we will get through the notes today. That's good. And it says that Lisa McCorkle purchased her new $45,000 automobile with a $5,000 down payment and financed the rest with an installment loan for 72 months at an APR of 6%. By the way, 6% to buy a new car, that's really high. I would not recommend buying a new car if your APR is going to be 6%. Find Lisa's monthly payment using the formula, find the total amount repaid, and find the finance charge. So first thing we need to do, I'm just going to do this off to the side. The amount financed, or not the amount financed, the amount financed. This was the wrong thing I typed, or I wrote in here. This was the finance charge. So the finance charge. I did want to write in amount financed over here. So amount financed is how much money was borrowed. So $45,000 car with a $5,000 down payment. So what was the amount financed for this one, number two? How much was borrowed to pay back over the amount or over the time of the loan? How much money is borrowed for problem number two? So $45,000 car, $5,000 down payment. How much money was borrowed? Anybody? So if car costs 45,000, $5,000 down payment. How much money was borrowed to pay off the rest of it? So it's just 45 grand minus, yeah, 40,000. Good. So it's kind of like what we did a few days ago. So $40,000 is the amount financed, which is that's the value that equals P for our formula. So we need this number here in order to plug it in to this formula here. So here we go. Our monthly payment. So this is part A. Monthly payment is going to equal the principal value, 40,000, times the value of R. So it's 6% over, yeah, it is a lot. Yeah, $5,000 down payment is on a $40,000 car is really not that much. So a lot of it's being financed. So we can probably expect a very high monthly payment. So here we go, 6%. And that value of R, once again, it's the APR, 6% divided by the number of payments per year. So payments per year is going to be 12 because it's being paid over 72 months. So that means 12 months in a year. So 0.06 over 12. And then we're going to multiply that by parentheses 1.00 plus R again, 0.06 over 12. And then that is to the n power. So 72, because that's the total amount of payments to pay off the car. So 72 total months worth of payments. And then that gets divided by, so that's our numerator, and our denominator is 1.00 plus the value of R again, 0.06 over 12 to the 72nd power again, minus 1.00. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to freeze my screen here. And I want you to use the Desmos calculator to figure out the monthly payment. Once you think you have it, type it into the chat. And it could go directly to me. It doesn't have to go to everybody, but it can go directly to me. But try to work this out based on what we just did a few minutes ago. And I'm going to do this as well. All right, does anybody have a number? Nice. So I got one answer in there and it is correct. Well done. So here's the answer. It is $662.92 a month. So a car payment of $662.92 a month. That's a very expensive car payment. But that's what it is. So let's take a look here at, there it is on the online calculator. So we've got our down payment, or not our down payment, but our amount borrowed, 40,000, multiplied by our value of R, that's the annual rate over 12, multiplied by, in parentheses, 1 plus R again, annual rate over 12, to the 72nd power. There's our numerator. Denominator is this part here repeated again, and then minus 1, and we get $662, and it rounds up to 92 cents for the monthly payment. So part A, that's what we end up with. For part B, what we need to figure out here is the total amount repaid. Now, this is going to be also a pretty large number. The total amount repaid is the number of payments, which is 72 right here. 72 times the monthly payment, 662.92. So $40,000 borrowed. Let's find out how much gets paid back. So 662.92 times 72. $47,730.24. So 47,730.24. So that right there is more than the cost of the car before the down payment. 72 months is 6 years. So 6 years later, they will have paid $47,730 for the $40,000 that was borrowed, plus the initial $5,000 down payment. So for a $45,000 car, this person paid over $52,000 for that car. And by the time they're done paying it off, 6 years later, that car is not going to be worth anything close to $40,000. So this is why some people don't like the idea of car loans. And overall, if you're paying 6%, don't do it. That's why I said at the beginning there, don't do it. On a new car, I would say don't pay anything more than like 1.9% interest if you're buying a new car. So if you can't get that interest rate, find something older and a lot less expensive that you might be able to just buy outright without having to finance. But that right there, ooh, that's a lot of money to borrow and a lot of money to pay back for a car that's just going to depreciate really quickly. And for those of you who are into cars a little bit, another good reason to buy a used car is that if you buy a car that's like 10 years old, it's probably getting close to being at its lowest value already. So if you turn around and sell it a few years later, you're really not going to lose that much money. And if anybody here has ever like bought and sold used cars before, or like bought a used car and then sold it a few years later, sometimes you don't lose any money on it, which is kind of nice. Last thing is the finance charge. So the finance charge is going to be the total amount repaid, the 47,730.24 minus the amount borrowed, which was 40,000. So that means that they were charged $7,730.24 to borrow $40,000, which is a lot. That is a lot of money to charge in order to borrow some money. All right, that is it for the notes. So let's go have a quick look at your assignment, and then we will get out of here because we are just about out of time. So like I mentioned, the first 4 problems, you're going to have to use that A13 table where you have to figure out the APR value and then the number of months to repay it back. It gives the amount financed already, so you don't actually have to figure out the down payment here. And And so it just gives you all the information you need. So use that table A13, figure out those problems A, B, C, and D for problems 3 through 6. For 7 and 8, you're figuring out the monthly payment and the finance charge. So you're going to be using the formula for everything else on this problem. And then after that, you're going to be working on 9 through 23, but the odds only. I crossed off all the evens, just because there's kind of a lot of problems to do on this one. So I just went ahead and said, all right, just do the odds, and fill in those answers as you go. So that's it for 8.3.